Meseret Filmapalooza.
Bienvenue à Filmapalooza.
Ja, hallo allemaal. Welcome to Filmapalooza.
ようこそフィルマパローザへ。
Howdy, Filmapalooza.
Aslama, marhaba bikum fi Filmapalooza.
Bem-vindos ao Filmapalooza.
Bienvenidos a Filmapalooza.
Aquama.
G'day from Adelaide, Australia, and welcome to Filmapalooza.
Karachi से Filmapalooza में आपको खुशामदीद.
Cześć, życzę Wam niesamowitej Filmapaloozy.
Welcome to Filmapalooza.
Bienvenidos y bienvenidas a Filmapalooza.
Et je vous souhaite à tous un très très bon Filmapalooza.
Welcome everybody to Filmapalooza. Filmapalooza is the annual awards festival for the 48-Hour Film Project, an international filmmaking competition where we're in 115 cities around the world. We're so glad to bring to you the special panel today. It's just one of many workshops that we're holding over these 4 days. In addition to our workshops and panels, we have films, we've had networking events, and everything caps off tomorrow with our annual awards ceremony, where we're going to announce the winner of the best 48-hour film of 2020. So without further ado, let's get our panel started. Today we're going to be talking about the next level, 48-hour filmmakers who have gone on to television and to feature films. So let me introduce our panelists. First, we have Hannah McPherson. Hannah is originally from Albuquerque, studied film production at Loyola Marymount University in LA, and also attended the UCLA Writing for Television program. She created, wrote, and directed the edgy teen thriller series Tagged for Awesomeness TV. She directed 2 episodes of the Netflix show Trinkets. She rewrote a feature called Merciless and is attached to direct. She also wrote and directed Sick House, the first ever made-for-mobile vertically shot feature film. And she has just finished post-production on a feature film she wrote and directed called Pure, which is available on Hulu as part of the Into the Dark series. Welcome, Hannah.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Wayne Slayton. Wayne is an independent movie director, screenwriter, and producer. He began developing and directing short film projects under Moonlight Filmworks in 2007. He wrote and directed his first feature-length movie, Backroad, in 2010. His 48-hour film, Cold War, was selected as part of our special screening at the 2012 Cannes Film Festival's Short Film Corner. The following year, his script Dropa was a quarterfinalist in the Academy of Motion Pictures Art and Sciences Nicholl Fellowship in Screenwriting competition. He has directed the spy thriller Osprey, followed by the short film Red Pearl, which screened aboard the International Space Station. Through his production company F64 Films, Slayton directed the artistic documentary Ash, The Art of Wayne Gilbert, along with the sci-fi feature film Dropa, currently on Showtime and the Movie Channel. Welcome, Wayne. Joining us in addition is Chris Parker. Chris is an American tech executive and entrepreneur living in the Netherlands. The 48-hour film project was fundamental to his ambition to make a feature film. Working with his partner Richard Schutt, they brought the 48 HFP to the Netherlands. The winner of the first Amsterdam edition, Kristen Koenig, became Chris's producing partner, and together they have released 3 features. They are using a revolutionary adaptation of agile development methodologies to drastically reduce the cost and risk of narrative feature film production. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Mark. Delighted to be here.
And our last guest is Jonathan Zuck. Jonathan is an award-winning photographer and filmmaker who is bi-coastal, splitting time between Washington, D.C. and L.A. Jonathan has created more than 20 short films, many of them for the 48-hour film project, including best films in D.C., Miami, and Baltimore. Jonathan has directed 3 feature films, the most recent of which is Meant to Be Broken, a road trip crime spree shot entirely with 48-hour film team volunteers up and down the East Coast. Jonathan's films have appeared and received top honors in festivals around the world, and he is currently in pre-production on his next feature. Welcome, Jonathan.
Hey, great to be here, Mark.
Well, it's so great to have you all with us. Thank you for taking the time to join us here at Filmapalooza. We've got lots of questions for you this afternoon. We're going to have a discussion about how you got your start and basically the path you've taken through to where you are today. We're eager to share your success stories with our filmmakers and hopefully inspire them to follow in your footsteps. Our first question is, if you could each tell us what your connection to the 48-hour film project is and how that start or your experience with the 48 has impacted your next steps in filmmaking. And let's start with you, Hannah.
Well, I was living in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and in 2007, I had some friends who were forming a 48-hour team. And they asked if I wanted to help, and I was really interested. And as I sort of learned more about it, I decided I actually wanted to form my own team because I'm a competitive person, and I've always wanted to write and direct. I went to film school, so it seemed like a great way to sort of put my, to walk the walk instead of talk the talk. And that was the beginning of 7 years of competing in the Albuquerque 48-hour film project. And it was so fun because my friends, we all were very competitive and we got better year after year with competing films. But I think that sort of that has been what has defined me as a filmmaker, is just doing the work. And that's what the 48-hour meant to me, was hands-on practical experience with the end goal of having a completed film, which is so fantastic. And a lot of my transition to being a full-time writer and director in Los Angeles has been saying yes to things that had, low money or very short time schedules. And honestly, the 48 is what made me so capable at just being light on my feet, ready to embrace the chaos. So I feel very thankful for the experience of the 48.
Sure. Wayne, what about you? I think you're muted, maybe. Still not hearing you.
It disappeared off my screen. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I got into this a little later than most people. I found it later in my life. I didn't know a whole lot about digital filmmaking until around, late 2006, 2007. I was interested in learning more about it. Took some editing classes, things like that. My background had been in broadcast journalism, but nothing to do with filmmaking. And so I found out about the Houston 48-Hour Film Festival, and that was literally the first thing I ever did. And I worked on producing, shooting, and editing that piece. And we took home 4 awards that year, and it was like, okay, maybe we can keep doing this. And so over the years, we competed for the next 5 years and in the Houston 48-Hour Film, and we were able to grow a team, which is kind of interesting. I always use it as a benchmark each year. The 48-Hour Film would be the thing that came around annually that would let me kind of gauge where we were, if we were improving or not. And we do other short films in between, and eventually feature films. In 2011, we were fortunate to win the local one, which got us some exposure from that, which was great. The 2 biggest things I took away from the 48-Hour Film was being able to work under pressure. It enables you to act quickly and think on your feet. I've been on film sets where things have been held up because people are trying to find a solution. And as you know, in a 48-hour film, you got to find those solutions really quick. And I found that's helped me on other productions, and it's saved us money. And the other thing is team building. A lot of the people that were on my latest feature film were people I'd worked with for years through the 48-hour film. So I found those to be, invaluable tools and things that this process has offered us.
Great. That's fantastic. Chris, what about you? How did you start with the 48?
Well, I love the question because this is where I was hoping to start anyways, that I can just give a shout out to so many people that have been, I guess, just instrumental in the initial dream of making a feature film. Obviously you, Mark and Liz and the whole 48 group for even creating the concept. I think we couldn't have done it without that. And then as the story goes, dear friend, Trevor Mackay from Los Angeles was over visiting in Amsterdam, and we made a short video. We're very amateur, simply because he was sort of putting me on the spot because I keep saying that I wanted to get involved in film. But so he brought his gear over, and through that experience, which Richard Schut was part of, Trevor made the side comment, "Oh, this sort of felt like a 48." And Richard and I had never heard of such a thing. So we, of course, said, well, what's that then? And as the story goes, Mark, Richard and I, to the Netherlands, and that was just an absolutely incredible experience. We ran it for a number of years, and Richard still is doing the 48, all around Europe. And the person whose team won, who was part of the team that won the first Amsterdam, as well as others after that, was Christian Knigge. And actually, that sort of coming together of minds has continued for years and years and years. And we have indeed made 3 features, and we have been collaborating on a new way of making, feature-length films, and also just very dear friends. So it's so I think the 48 has been just an amazing foundation to make all of these dreams come true.
Nice. And Jonathan, to you, what's your start and what's your takeaway?
Well, it's funny. I made my first feature film when I was 14 on Super 8 camera, and then it sort of lay dormant for quite a while. And one of the things that's interesting about Washington, D.C. is that there's just as much film and video shot there as there is in L.A. It's just the Discovery Channel, National Geographic, the FBI, the federal government, etc. And so what you have is a city full of frustrated narrative filmmakers that have a day job of doing film and have the expertise and the craft, but just don't have an infrastructure for doing narrative work. And I think that's why it was such a great city to start the 48-hour film project. My association with it was because I owned an art house movie theater that became the first HQ of the first 48-hour film project. And then for many, many years, we had a team called DC Dogs that did films not only in Washington, but then we scooted over to Baltimore, and then every once in a while road tripped into Miami because we just enjoyed the process of making the films. There was a movie about a chess prodigy called Searching for Bobby Fischer. And this prodigy had 2 coaches. One was this very strict rules-based coach played by Ben Kingsley, and the other was this speed chess player played by Lawrence Fishburne. And at the very end of the movie, it became important that he had had the coaching from both of those coaches. And so similar to the other folks on this panel, I think one of the things the 48-hour film project has really given me is the ability to solve problems quickly, because you're not making a 48-hour film when you're making a feature. You're making 20 48-hour films when you're making a feature. It's not as though you have a bunch of extra time. And so the ability to do that, to play that speed chess version of filmmaking, that what happens when things go wrong, has really benefited my filmmaking. And we've created 3 features thus far, and hoping to keep at it. It's been a very important part of my filmmaking growth.
Well, that's certainly something we hear time and time again, is that it really doesn't matter what level of filmmaking you're in, you're still always going to be battling the time issue and often battling the budget issue. And we all know problems come up, and how do you solve those problems? So our next question, I really want to hear from you. What prompted you to make that next step, to go beyond the short to the feature, or in your case, Hannah, to the television? Or since we're starting with you, Hannah, what was the next step? Was it into TV, or did you do a feature first?
The big step to I think transitioning to a more professional, just being able to be paid to do this was through TV. And I had been always mostly interested in movies, but tracking television, after shows like 6 Feet Under and just the writing on television was getting so good. I thought it was where the best characters were living now. And so I had always written sort of as a means to an end because I wanted to direct, but I fell in love with writing. And so while I was working on various odd sort of industry adjacent jobs in New Mexico, I was writing a lot. And I wrote some features, but I wanted to learn how to write TV pilots. And so I moved to Los Angeles and did the UCLA the professional program for TV writing. And I had that 9 months. I promised myself I wouldn't work. I just focused on writing, and I wrote 4 pilots, and one of those sold. And it was sold to a very small sort of YouTube-based company, Awesomeness TV. The show did become a half-hour show on Hulu, which is exciting. But if I had not had samples from the 48, and I had also shot a sizzle with my 48-hour team, we shot a sizzle for what I thought this pilot should look like, I would not have been hired to direct all the episodes, which was amazing.
Wayne, what about you? Did you use your any of your 48-hour films as part of your reel to show off your talents? And also, when did you make that transition from amateur or part-time filmmaker to full-time?
Well, like I said, we did the first one in 2007. And so, it's a year between each 48-hour film. So I said, okay, I'm going to do some more shorts and so forth. In about late 2008, I said, I'm going to make this short film titled Backroad. But it wasn't a 5-minute short. It was more like a 20-minute short. And as I started breaking it down and kind of looking what was involved, I said, well, for crying out loud, for what it takes to do 20 minutes, I might as well just spend the extra time to film and let's just see what happens. And so, like I said, my background was in broadcast journalism and art. But I learned Backroad was my film school. It took over a year and a half to do it. We did it mostly on weekends and things. And the goal was to, 1, finish it, just like a 48-hour film. 2, screen it locally so everybody involved could get excited about it. And 3, if we were lucky, we would get some kind of distribution deal out of it. Well, we hit all those. And it was at that point that I realized, okay, we've got the resources here and we've got the people that we can do this with. So it's just a matter of how do we do it on a bigger scale? And so then I was hired to direct another movie and continue to make shorts. And about, I guess it was 2011, I decided, okay, I'm going to try this full time. Now I live in Houston, Texas, so we don't make a ton of feature films here, but you can make a living as doing commercial and industrial work on the side, which is what a lot of us do. And then we do our feature films. And then 2011 is when I started developing Dropa, which actually took us several years to get completed. We had funding fall in and out, and it was a whole next level kind of thing for learning how to do filmmaking. But my experience with having a resume with a couple of feature films and also the amount of shorts I'd done with the 48-hour film and things like that helped us with finding investors and people feeling comfortable and putting money into the movie. And just kind of took off from there.
Nice. Chris, you had said that you had a lifelong dream of making a feature, and then you connected with Christian. So how did the two of you then decide, okay, we're going to do it? And what did that first look like?
Well, it looked like lunch. As triggered by Wayne, I think the first 48 in the Netherlands was in 2007. And so a number of years after that, it was, I think, mid 2012, if my memory serves me right. And I was making some life changes, deciding actually to leave a really high stress corporate role for a bit. And as I remember it, one of the first people at that lunch table was Christian, and he had a script, and he had a team down in Portugal, and they had a plan. But what they didn't have was, shall we say, some commercial acumen and some project management around it to get it done. And since I had just become free and I had a bunch of cash in my pocket, he basically said, "Well, do you have any reason to say no?" I was like, "Oh shit, here we go," and it was great. It was absolutely a dream come true. I don't know where it came from, but yeah, one of my life goals was to make a movie, and I define that as to be meaningfully involved in a feature film and to be able to buy the ticket from a cinema. And The Right Juice, which was our first feature that we made in a very traditional way, certainly achieved that. You know, that was picked up in Portugal, where it was shot and played for 5 weeks in cinemas. And so I was able to go get that ticket. So that was sort of, I don't think it pushed me to the next level because it was always part of the plan. But certainly Christian came with all of the creative pieces in place that needed some commercial support to put it in order and really get it over the line.
Nice. Great. And Jonathan, what about you? When did you know that you were making that step from shorts to features, and how did that come about?
Well, I think it probably could be best described as a misstep. But the way that it came about is we actually did a 48-hour film called Max, which was an action thriller complete with fight choreography, martial arts, guns, etc. And we came away from that saying we essentially shot, a 6-minute action film in a day. What could we do if we had like a 3-day weekend just for shooting? And then 3 days became 6 days, and we decided we were going to shoot a action feature film in 6 days. And we had a ton of locations and a lot of fight choreography and everything like that. So we shot for 3 days, then had 3 days off to do the fight choreography and things like that, and then shot for another 3 days. And so if you want to see what a filmmaking misstep looks like, you can go on to Amazon Prime and check out Rogue Hunter from DC Togs. That was our first attempt, but we certainly had the bug at that point because as crazy it was, we shot a feature in 6 days. And, after that, it's almost like nothing else really measured up to that experience.
So it really sounds like you just, decided to make the leap. No thinking, just going and making it happen.
Yeah, I mean, that was basically right. I mean, and I learned that there's things you should do before taking the leap, like pre-production and things like that. But we learned by doing, and there are parts of the film I'm still proud of, and so it was a very valuable exercise, and we've sort of incrementally made our way into the feature market, starting with this, and then hopefully the best one that we've done is the one that just came out last month.
Great. Well, we're going to take a look at some of the trailers for each of your works. Hannah, in talking about you, you're a little bit different than the other three panelists because you have done both television and films. So I'd like, first I want to take a look at the trailer for one of your TV series, Tagged. And then when we come back from that, really like to hear, tell our filmmakers what's the biggest difference between working on a television series compared to working on a feature film. But let's take a look at the trailer first.
Did you get the mask? I got it. You're gonna go, right?
Haley bought a ticket for California.
Are you okay with that?
I don't blame her.
My cousin Nikki killed herself. Who's my best friend.
She won't stop asking about Nikki. She's suspicious about this one girl named Jai Mathis.
Nikki wasn't this saint you seem to think she was.
Why are you here? She's friends with Zoe. They went to school together.
I'm scared of her. I don't know who I can trust anymore. Zoe was using you.
You don't know that.
Zoe is King Cousin. Why are you defending her? No, why did you kiss her?
I can't stop looking over my shoulder.
Every time we think we're safe, we're wrong.
Who is Mr. Empty?
the online urban legend. He sucks your soul when you sit at the computer. He doesn't have to hurt you. You'll hurt yourselves when he's done with you. You'll give up everything just to get away.
He calls. He always calls. If you want something, he'll give it to you, but then he knows your secrets. And he controls you. You can't stop him. Don't go looking for him, okay? I see somebody is after me.
We're all their puppets.
We're gonna stop him.
That looks so cool, Hannah. That's really great. So that's a teen kind of thriller series. So tell us more. I think you might be muted.
Sorry about that. That's the trailer for season 3 of Tagged. So we ended up going for 3 seasons, and it's sort of interesting. You were talking about the difference between, working as a director in television and working in features, because the model for Tagged, because it was so low budget, season 1 actually was very similar to making a 4-hour long movie. I was the only writer, so I would each season write a 200-page script. The first season was 8 half hours, and season 2 and season 3 were each 12 half hours. And then we shot in New Mexico. My LA producers let me go back to New Mexico, and they have a great tax incentive, but I also got to hire all the people that I'd worked with for free for 10 years on the weekends making shorts. And I feel that, that was the highlight, really, was getting to work with my friends and everyone get a paycheck. But then we would block shoot 8 or 12 half hours, and I directed all the episodes. I didn't swap out with other directors. So season 1 was, I think, an 18-day shoot for 8 half hours. By season 3, we had more money. We still were making 12 half hours for the price tag of most 1-hour dramas, just single episodes. But we did get 26 days. Well, I'll do anything for extra days. So to get 8 more days by season 3. But it was an exercise in the type of thing we're talking about. We would go to the high school, and these brilliant actors would have to emote from 12 episodes worth of scenes in 2 days. We'd only have the high school for 2 days. Then we'd move to the next location. Maybe it's Rowan's house, and do all of Rowan's, scenes for 12 episodes worth of content. So emotionally, these kids were just wrecked. And as a director, it really took the type of really being detail oriented about where they were in their journey, even though we were shooting out of order. So my Tagged experience was very similar to making a long feature. I have since then directed some episodic TV, which is a totally different beast. You're a hired gun. You come in service of a showrunner and the creators. The crew is already built in. You're working with a DP who knows the show better than you, and actors who know these characters. So then it's really about just sort of servicing, making sure you're getting the right footage and the right calibration of emotions for the scene. And I worked as an editor for years. So that's, I feel like I can deliver on getting coverage. But I prefer to, be at the helm of the ship, as I know everyone here can relate. So the most recent feature I made was for Blumhouse and Hulu, and that was a 90-minute movie shot in 16 days in Los Angeles. And that was right back to what I was used to,
Nice. And for that one, how did you get, how did that one come to be? How did this most recent one you shot? Is that something that you wrote and then sold?
Yes. Interestingly, it's also still sort of considered television, because Blumhouse Television had a deal with Hulu to make a movie for them every month about the holiday in that month. It's called the Into the Dark series. And I had been, I knew some of the people there. I'd interviewed for, a couple different jobs, and they had an idea that they thought I might be good for, and brought me in. But it was a machine that was moving. They were cranking out a movie every 5 weeks. A same thing where there was DPs that were leapfrogging and editors who were leapfrogging. So I got the job. There wasn't a script. I had 4 weeks to write the script, 3 weeks prep, 16-day shoot. And the day I got the job, I knew the release date of the movie, which is something that's so rare. It was, and it was
No kidding.
Yeah, 6 months later. So it's pretty fast.
Wow, that is an intense turnaround time. Wayne, let's go over to you. So yours, picking up on what Hannah said, she had written that feature, and you won a script writing contest with your feature script for Dropa, which is what you then went to work on. So let's take a look at the trailer for Dropa, and then I want to hear your story.
Great.
Harrison?
Yeah,
Where have you been?
call it a vacation.
Next time you go on vacation, do me a favor and let me know.
Not my job to anymore. Besides,
Monroe was hit.
how bad? Carter? What scares?
He didn't make it.
Back in 2004, we found a stone disc washed ashore near Rockport, along with several cocoons. The discs told the story of the Dropas and hieroglyphics. And then there was this one. What's that? It's what you're hunting.
You need to understand who really cares about you. You gave everything to the Legion. Open your eyes.
I'm looking for the tenant in room 832.
Good tenant. Model tenant. Always pays the rent.
Your model tenant is a Dropa.
I wish Mommy was still with us.
We'll be fine. I will not let anything happen to you.
I've done some pretty bad things, Harrison. Things that I can't take back.
You did it to protect the cause. Like all of us.
That's the party's line. We did it because we had no other choice. We're on our own out here. It's about survival. Ours. We let these Dropas walk away, and now they're back to finish us.
Can you blame them?
You're no saint in all of this.
I know.
That looked fantastic, Wayne. So tell us a little bit about making that movie or coming. Let's take it back. You won the script competition. What happened next? How did you get from there to a completed film that's now showing on Showtime and the Movie Channel?
Well, we didn't win it. I wish we had won. It was a Nickel Fellowship in Screenwriting.
Mhm.
I'd never entered a script competition before, but I thought we were in the process. We'd lost fund. This was originally titled Patriot Act before it was titled Dropa. And we had lost funding. And I thought, you know what? I made a few revisions to the script. And I said, let me just enter this script competition. And I figured, what's the best script competition is the one that kept coming up. So I said, okay. And so when we made it to the quarterfinals, I think there was over 7,000 entries that year. And we made it into the final 300 films. It got us some recognition, got us some people to notice the film and take the story. It gave us street cred, if you will, for the story being a solid story. And so then it was just a matter of finding the money, which we did. We had to make that film. We had to scale it back a lot. Instead of it being sort of in the future, it was sort of a alternate dystopian now, which is funny because you see a lot of that on television now and in movies. But back when I did that, it wasn't happening very much. So anyway, that led into us finally getting the money to shoot it. We shot it in 16 days. It was definitely a lot of 48-hour film type stuff where we had bigger crews on some days. We had crews as much as almost 40 people. And then we had days where we had a crew as little as 7. So, we just tried to tailor it to what would fit for, because some of the scenes are pretty big in there. We had a lot of locations in that film. Off the top of my head, I want to say we had like 40 locations in there, which is a lot if you think about 16 days. And it does include exteriors and stuff like that. And what was really cool about it was the thing that enabled me to branch beyond just working here locally and in Texas. Our composer, Mike Newport, is in New Zealand. Composed a lot of stuff for television film there. It was a great experience with him. And then Factory VFX is a visual effects company based in California. I did a lot of big movies. I think they thought we had a bigger budget film originally, which we planned, and I met with them about it. And even when everything got scaled down, they believed in the story and they stuck with it, and they produced a lot of the visual effects shots for the movie, which is really great. So it was a really fun experience to branch out and meet some people in California and also overseas that helped us finish the film.
Nice. And so then how did that lead? How'd you get from finished film to the distribution?
Right. Well, my biggest thing, I love film festivals and I go to film festivals, but I've never been a huge proponent of necessarily putting my projects in very many of them. I've always sort of been focused, except for shorts. I love to put shorts in festivals, but feature films, it was always about, can we monetize it in some way? And so my producer, Martin DeLone, he's my producing partner. We knew when we had it finished, we'd already talked to a different sales agent during the process of making it. We actually had them on board early on, and but it took a number of years to get it made. And in the process, sort of their business model changed and some other things. So when we got it done, we had done a short contract with them, but we just felt it wasn't the right fit. And so then Martin went out and met with some people in LA, and Shoreline showed interest in it and got behind it. Nice. And they're the sales agent, and they closed the deal with Showtime, and we've got it distributed. I don't know, it's a lot of territories now. I want to say 32 countries now. Between, most of it's like video on demand kind of stuff, and then we've got some television rights sold.
Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, Chris, so you've made 3 features with Christian, and we're going to take a look at the trailer for one of them. And I want you to dive into this agile process. Kind of, you've taken a slightly different path, and you're coming to this conversation as a producer. So we all want to hear from the producer's perspective. How do you make the feature happen, and then what do you do with it once you've got it? But let's take a look at the trailer first. Before we go there, why don't you set it up, what we're about to see?
This is a trailer for Exposure, which is the third feature we've made. Before I tell you how potential disaster could have prevented this film from happening, I think let's run the trailer, and then we'll talk about how we salvaged it and made something pretty remarkable from it.
Let's do it.
You really are broken.
You're always there, in my face, in my space.
It's unbearable to live with you. Get out. I mean it.
Get out of my house.
Fine.
I don't know if
if you know that woman, but she's just cold and frigid and doesn't pay any attention to anyone else around her. And now she's just gone. That's just how this goes. You have an argument and then she's just gone.
Kiss you, okay?
Relax your shoulders. Come on. Okay. Great. Everything I did was wrong. I was just wrong.
Looked beautiful. All right, so near disaster. How did you salvage it?
Well, the agile filmmaking method that we are still discovering and perfecting basically takes some of the principles that these other creative geniuses on this panel follow and say, well, we're looking for a different way of doing that. And I'm also a podcaster, and there is an episode with Christian Kniga that we're going to release on Monday in answer to this panel here, because the other half, the creative half of this discussion, wasn't able to be here. So we'll put that link somehow in the chats and things so people can find that, so they can hear about sort of the directorial approach. But the way we make this is really based on agile development. It didn't start that way. It started with an idea from Christian, but as soon as he started talking to me about it, I started clicking some, hey, this is how we do these things over in corporate IT land, and this is what he was talking about. And in agile development, basically it's a premise of working together in order to deliver software over documentation of software up front. And so it's not that you saying there's not a need for documentation, but in this case, and how we apply it to film is we don't have a script. And so what I've been fascinated by some of the stories that are preceding me is we don't have a script. We don't pitch it, for pre-sales. What we do is we have a really solid concept, at least we think. This will come to the failure part soon. Yeah, we have a solid concept with locations, props, characters developed, some flow of the characters. We know basically the genre. So very much inspired by 48, actually. And then we have an absolute top team, small top team with the writer and editor on the team. And then we shoot in a chronological order. So instead of having a shooting script, which is more efficient in that case, we take it very lean and very narrow and tell the story. The joyful part of that and the risky part is that, for example, the talent can, in the evening retrospectives, give their feedback and tell basically share what's working for them, what's not working for them. And we can actually adapt the story as we go. Now, the reason I love it as a producer is this is a way that we're trying to collapse the production of a good feature film down to basically 3 months. So our dream is to have basically initiation of idea to completed feature in 3 months. Of course, you can't do that if you have a lot of FX or it's a period piece, or even, I would even argue, comedy, because that is really, really, those are very, very, very specific, genres that you couldn't, pack into this new method. So what happened was, and I don't remember all the dates, but for the first film, Second Honeymoon, that we made this way. Christian was at the Flyway Festival in Wisconsin, and there he won a Maverick Award for the method. And he decided, it was already planned, but after that to take a week and shoot the second film based on this approach. And that's where the Geerteke van Lierop, who's the blonde actress in the story, was driving around the RV. And the original premise of that movie was that she was estranged or coming to grips with something with her mother. And the lady in the photographs was actually expected to be her mother. And, we shot that. It was in the can. And unfortunately, after the first edit, there was no story. It was beautiful, but there was no story. And then you have this sort of tension. Okay, do we just bin it? And what happened was, again, very entrepreneurially, and this is very an entrepreneurial sort of approach. Someone said, well, wait, what if we shoot the other half of it? And a couple tense brainstorm sessions over in Amsterdam. And the idea emerged to actually recast the lady in the photographs. And that was Erica Anderson, who happened to be an actress. And we said, okay, well, what if we take half the story we have, recast that character into a love interest? And so we brought Erica over to Portugal. And so she was the darker, red-haired lady who was driving around in the Jeep around southern Portugal. And we shot there for, I think, another week. And then had to stitch the story together. And what could have been a complete failure and a waste of remarkably beautiful moments and half a story, we're able to actually to salvage and bring it together into what unfortunately is a bit of a shorter feature, because it comes in around, I think, 53 minutes. So it, on the festival circuit, that sort of hurts, because that's either a very, very long short or a way too short feature. But the story itself stands. And the last little comment there is, when we were back in Flyway premiering it, there was a lady at the last comment. Lady stood up in the back and said, "Well, this is a story about two women in a relationship and pain, and she had never seen her story so authentically and truthfully told like this." And that was just an amazing gift to realize that we had really connected to something. And
that's very rewarding when you hear the audience respond like that. That's fantastic. And I noticed that one, even though it was shot in Lisbon and produced in Europe, it was shot in English. Is that something you all make a conscious effort to do, all of your features in English, or it's a case by case?
So far, everything has been in English. I have been an executive producer recently on a short, which is in the Netherlands, that Christian was directing. And that one was in Dutch, but that was more of the nature of that project. This one was shot in Wisconsin. So that was at least an American version of English. And it was in the southern Portugal. And since it was already basically in English on the first case, we just kept going with that. For me, commercially, and this is where Christian and I regularly have debates on creative versus commercial tensions on projects. I think I will always tend to English, because that's really just a universal sellable language, unless there's a real reason in the story to do something else.
Mm-hmm. Great. All right. Thank you for sharing that. All right, let's go to Jonathan. You have a wonderful road movie, which you actually shot on the road. Tell us about the trip you took and a little bit, then we'll get into the trailer.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story, because one of the rules of thumb with an indie feature is the first thing you should do is rewrite your script to eliminate most of the locations, because it's so expensive to move your cast and crew around, and so you try to limit and cheat the locations. But this was a film about a road trip crime spree where these two guys are traveling down the East Coast to try and break as many obscure laws as possible. And if there's a law in Philadelphia that says that you can't put a pretzel in a paper bag, why not do that on the same stairs that Rocky was on in his movie? And so against all odds, we decided we would just do the road trip. And what we did was we took a road trip down the East Coast of the United States, and we put just a very skeleton cast and crew into a couple of cars to make the drive. And so the question then becomes, how do you go from there? How do you prevent yourself from having to carry a huge crew and cast with you? And the answer was the 48-hour film project. What we did was reach out to a dozen city-winning 48-hour film teams and partnered with them in each city. So we made stops along the way in 12 different cities. And these 48-hour film teams brought additional crew, cast, locations, so that there's an authentic feel as a result to the film. So every city had a different cinematographer. So we brought along a different, we brought along a director of photography, Kevin Good,
Right.
who could act as a kind of a caddy to make sure that everybody, was shooting similarly and the footage would look the same.
Sure.
But we took our cars and we drove up to Amherst, Massachusetts, first of all, and met with an award-winning team there. And then from there, we were in Brooklyn, New York. After Brooklyn, we were in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We went from Philadelphia to Baltimore, Baltimore to Richmond, Richmond to Norfolk.
Wow.
Winston-Salem, Asheville, North Carolina, Savannah, Orlando, and Miami.
Nice.
And finally finished up in McLean, Virginia. You can see in the photo there, the homeowner is there, wondering how much of a cleanup cost he's going to have in his house. And so we just did this entire road trip and partnered with these award-winning 48-hour film teams and made the movie. Because we're a nonprofit, DC Dogs is a nonprofit, it allowed for a totally different model for filmmaking where everyone was a volunteer. Nobody had expectations of profit sharing because there wasn't profit.
Right.
We had a couple of sponsors, including my brain just fritzed on me.
Right.
The Slider Company,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and we shot the whole thing anamorphic, and so it was just a crazy fun ride. Maybe
Right.
we
And
should try
tell
to
us
play
how many days. How many days were you on the road?
We were on the road for including the time in Alexandria. The whole thing was 40 days.
Okay.
So just a lot of Airbnbs and Motel 6s along the way, and we got to make a lot of friends. And we have a credit crawl that looks like a James Bond film because there's like a production manager in each city and a location crew and things like that. So that's always been a dream as well. So it's the longest credit crawl of an independent film ever.
There you go. There you go. Well, let's take a look at the trailer.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm dying. Wait a minute, did you just say you're dying?
It's a tumor.
I'm sorry, what are you saying?
That it's a tumor and it's inoperable.
Harvey, I'm talking to you, man. Harvey. I don't think I've ever broken one single rule in my entire life. You want to?
1, 2, 3.
All right, hit it.
Act natural. I'm Special Agent Pulaski. This is Special Agent Remington.
I'm just trying to make it rain. You guys force me out now, and I'll call the cops. I'll tell them everything.
Nobody wants to be a hero. Sammy? I know where you live. I don't know how this happened.
You're dying?
Brain tumor. Victimless crimes only. It's not stealing.
What the hell is going on here?
We're on vacation. So we're gonna take money from morally bankrupt monsters? I think I can do that.
Why do I have to keep watch?
Okay, how about because last time you got a shot?
I love this part.
So, Harv, what's the plan? This may have been a mistake. Hey, did I tackle a redneck? Like a boss.
Looks like a lot of fun, Jonathan.
Yeah, it's just a crazy dark comedy road trip, but it was so much fun because we got access to locations that we never imagined we would have. In Norfolk, we needed a a fancy hotel restaurant. And the team there were able to secure us because they had done a favor for the concierge of a new Hilton that was built there. We got this beautiful Hilton. And so, one of the things that happens all the time in independent film is that you don't have any close-ups or any wide shots. And the reason you don't have any close-ups is because you run out of time for coverage. And the reason you don't have any wide shots is that you're usually cheating the picture. And if you show too much, it'll show that you're not really on the moon or whatever else. And so with some of these locations, we're able to just open up the camera wide and really just enjoy and soak in these local flavor and these locations along the road. It was really
Didn't you have a similar story in an amusement park as well in Florida?
We did, yeah. I mean, one of the locations was an amusement park in Orlando, Florida, and we had originally just asked if we could shoot in the parking lot and use it as a backdrop. And then once we were there, they said, "Hey, just make all the use of the amusement park that you want to." And so we were shooting in and around an amusement park. And again, I think it's when it really helped to be a nonprofit making this film, because people were really open to giving us things and making it easier to make the movie.
Sure. Well, I'm sure that nonprofit status did help, but I find in hearing stories from lots of our filmmakers, it's amazing the generosity of people when you just ask. They do try to help you when they can. So
people
what
like movies.
Yeah, people love movies. So
That's
what
true.
happened once you had this in the can? What was the next step? And you just had the official release last month, right?
Right. We just, on the 26th of February, we just had the official release. What we did was put it into the festival circuit to make sure that everyone that was involved in the film could see it on the big screen, right? Because like most of these things, they end up online, particularly during the pandemic. And so we put in a lot of festivals along that road trip so that people could see the film that they were a part of and bring their friends and family. And that was really exciting for them. And we also played in countries that I thought that the brand of humor would do well. So in Germany, in the UK, and Sydney, where dark humor is de rigueur, right? It did particularly well and won Best Picture in a couple of cities and Best Comedy in another one. So it did well in the festival circuit, and it got distribution. And so now it's just slowly being released onto different platforms. It's on Amazon, it's on Tubi, and after a while it'll be on everything.
Nice. Congratulations. All right. So now I have questions for all of you, and you can just jump in with the answer. But I guess something that our filmmakers want to know, and anybody watching, if you want to go ahead and post some questions in the chat, we'll try to answer some of them. But the question for all of you right now is, what's your advice to the filmmaker? He or she has made a 48-hour film or two, and they really have this dream of making a feature. Where do they start? Where do they start? I mean, we know that there's a lot of it. Just go for it. Just do it. But what are kind of the things they need to consider?
I'll start.
Okay.
I think for me, my biggest piece of advice to anyone is to make sure you have a really solid script. I think it's one of the things that's most rushed oftentimes when I've had, friends and colleagues who have made an indie feature, and it's like, it's your skeleton. Without it, you're going to fail. I think without a good script, you can't make a good movie. You can ruin a good script. So there's that. But really taking the time, it's so hard. People are going to donate their time. They're going to donate their money. It's going to be, expensive. So I think it's exciting, but really spending whatever it takes, even if it's a year, to get a script that lots of people have read, that people enjoy learning, making sure you have the structure sort of right. That would be my, trust me, I have made the mistake and been in post realizing if only we'd taken a little longer to workshop the dialogue or the structure, make sure it was even a story people cared about,
Right. Absolutely. Wayne, you had a thought?
Oh, it was the same thing. I just unfortunately had myself muted. It's story. You got to have a story, whether you're developing and writing it or somebody else. You've got to have a solid story. I mean, there's a lot of things. Anybody that's ever watched Clerks or anything like that realizes the filmmaking tool aspect of it was not so great as much as the story was, and that's what engaged the audience and it made it popular. And it's the same thing here. Once you find that story, you got to be passionate about it. The same kind of passion you have on these weekends. And what I've told people is you got to finish it. If you make the commitment, you bring the people together on however level that is. It's a volunteer thing. It's you got the money to do whatever you. I think as a producer and director, there's a responsibility to finish the project. You're going to take that commitment, follow it through, because there's so many good films I think that don't ever get finished for whatever reason, funding and that. And so that's where the 48-hour film comes in, because you do know you have the ability to finish these things. It may be a lot of sweat equity on your part, but whatever commitment that is, make sure to try and finish it.
Nice. Jonathan, you had a thought?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that, obviously you need to start with a strong script. There's no question. And I think that's probably where most films fall down, is the script isn't strong. But just to expand on that, you want to make the most use of cheap time as possible. In other words, once you're on set, once you're on a location, once you're paying for catering and things like that, is a very expensive time to be making modifications to your movie. So do table reads, do rehearsals, do things like that in advance, because it makes it so much easier to shoot when the day comes, and it's easier for people to just play with their roles, change things up a little bit. If everyone's really comfortable in their own skin and in the roles, and you've already worked out some of the problematic dialogue, et cetera. So make use of your cheap time so that you can really maximize the use of your expensive time. Good.
Chris, something to add?
Yeah, well, I would like to politely disagree with all three of the other panel members in a way, meaning our method, which actually calls to not have a completed script, but that is completely not a method for a first-time filmmaker. So if someone's saying, oh, agile filmmaking might be a way to, get my first film dream off the ground, I would say absolutely not. Because if we didn't have highly experienced teams that had worked well before together, that it never would have worked. And as we even proved, it came close to disaster. So maybe taking a producer perspective to the answer is know your ambition. Meaning a lot of the fellow filmmakers on here are very much in the industry in a way. And so that is a perfect way of making a film. So getting your script, getting it funded, getting the talent attached, etc. Pre-sales, these are a lot of the things you read about. That doesn't have to be your only level or target. Meaning, if you have a budget, a micro budget of under 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, whatever the budget is, and then write your script to that. And what we've been doing is also finding, very much like Jonathan did, sponsorships or locations. He called his nonprofit. I hope there was maybe some profit in it. When we do long ships, we take a very startup sort of entrepreneurial approach, saying, assume no profit. We'll pay a basic sort of wage or approach. And then we have a profit sharing structure that if and when it pops, then everyone will, have a relative, participation in the reward of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think set your ambition, because what I have many other friends who talk about making feature films a lot, but that's all they do. And so I really believe if they would say set their ambition to something that is achievable, and then make a financial plan, either pre-sales or crowdfunding or whatever the approach is, and then the power of imperfect action, probably your first time, and just get it done. Because while 48 has been a film school for so many people, a first time, I think, feature filmmaker will learn a lot and then do the second one better.
Very good point. Well,
we can only hope.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, Rogue Hunter, that was a stepping stone. So.
Right.
Exactly.
So one of the things that I admire about all four of you is this fact, is you had your ambition and you followed through to make it happen. So congratulations to each and every one of you. We are running up towards the end of our time. I'll ask our tech crew if there are any questions. They can post them in the chat and I can read them. But as we close out, why don't we go around the room, and what are you working on now? What's next in your filmmaking or TV making career? Hannah, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Yes, I'm about to start prep on a feature film. It's a movie that has a bigger budget than any movie I've worked on, so that's exciting. And we are out to actresses right now, and we will be shooting in Canada this summer. So just very excited, gearing up to. I have missed being on set, so I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, that's great. Wayne, what about you?
It's going to sound weird to start, but in 2017, I'm in Houston, and we had a hurricane that kind of devastated us, and we were ready to shoot a short film that I developed called The Crossing, and it got put on the back burner. Then I got involved with DROPA and getting that done, and they were all ready to go, and we were going to shoot in February, and COVID hit of last year. And so it went on the back burner again, and what's happened in that process, it's developed into a 5-part anthology now, so that's just one of 5 interconnected stories.
Nice.
My hope is, once we kind of get more of these vaccines, mine's coming up on Tuesday, and get some of these people ready by June, late June, we'll be ready to go ahead and start going into that. All the pre-production, everything's done. That thing's just ready to go shoot. So hopefully that starts here this summer.
Fantastic. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
Chris, what's up? What's next on your list?
Well, a couple answers. One, I wish we would have been locked and loaded when Corona hit, because I think early on, because of the way we shot, we could have locked ourselves up in a mountain castle for 2 months without penalizing anyone, have come out with something brilliant. So honestly, this moment, and also having Hannah and Jonathan and you, Mark, and not you yet, Wayne, on the podcast, has given an amazing spark with Christian and I, because Christian and I are basically the group that works on the podcast. And so him and I are working together on a weekly basis on little mini films, because we video the podcast, but that's hardly feature film. But while we've been going on, this Christian has been chatting with me on WhatsApp as far as like, hey, what about this? What about that? And so I am certain we will make the 3rd agile filmmaking feature, maybe this year or next year. And we'll obviously keep the 48 in our spirit while we do that.
Fantastic. And Jonathan, you're working on a script now?
Yeah, I actually had a feature called Juris and Prudence greenlit a year ago, which is a spring break comedy set in Tampa with a bunch of law school students. And so as you can imagine, a spring break comedy needs to wait until things have really cleared up in terms of the pandemic, because it's a lot of people squeezed into a small space. But I'm really excited about it. It's 10 times the budget that I've ever had for a film. So we'll be getting, named actors and things like that involved, and a professional crew, and shooting on locations all around Tampa. So hopefully that happens sometime late in the summer. So really excited about that.
Nice. I think we are going to get some questions here. They're appearing in. All right. Did any of you make a major career change from one industry into filmmaking? If so, what were some of your largest challenges? So on these questions, we're going to take 1 or 2 answers so we can get more of the questions. So who wants to tackle that? Jonathan?
Sure. I made a major career change from running a trade association in Washington to being a full-time photographer and filmmaker. And I suppose the primary challenge was just getting over fear of moving from making a healthy living to making no living, to start on that journey. I mean, it's not quite no living, doing some videos and commercials and things like that. But it's a very big change for me. But after 20 years at the trade association, it was time to really dive into this full time.
Great. All right, let's take a look at the next question. How do you go about finding funding and then distribution? So we touched a little bit on it, but tell us more what your experience has been. Who would like to start off this question?
Well, I mean, what we did was we went through and set up a private placement memorandum for DROPA because it was just, we knew it was going to be a bigger budget film,
right?
With the SEC and all that, because we didn't want to run into any kind of legal issues with going out and asking for money, and develop the business plan. I mean, there were a lot of steps involved with getting to that point. But ultimately, before we ever got a dime, we asked for a loan from somebody for $25,000 to shoot 3 scenes that were actually going to be in the movie, because I didn't want to do a fake trailer, and I want to show them this is what you're paying for, as opposed to kind of a fake concept. And when we did that, we were able to secure a sales agent initially through that along with the script, and also that helped us in we flipped that. The person that loaned us the money had the option of either we pay them back in 2 years with interest, or they can roll it into the production, and they ended up rolling that money into production, which gave us there was another person on our side for helping us raise money, because like, yeah, we believe in the project, we took a risk, this is what they can do, let's take it from there. So that was one of the ways we started.
Nice. Jonathan?
We actually did shoot a trailer for the movie, and just using my convertible and locations around DC. And it became really critical, both from a fundraising standpoint, some of which we did on Kickstarter, as well as the recruiting of these teams, locations, sponsors, food donors. All these people were really engaged by the trailer. So I really recommend putting together something visual for people to react to, because that made a huge difference for us. Nice.
Chris?
Yeah, maybe a different answer that maybe you might expect, but talent. So the thing that's really on my mind as far as the next project is to attach talent. And I would wonder if you were able to get an A-list talent attached, that might even trump a script. And then once you have that talent or that audience, so if you're going to be making something on a book or something, or a story or a meme that has an audience, I believe that will be extremely attractive to funding and distribution if you can bring that audience with you.
All right, that's a good point. Hannah, you've done a lot of work with studios and different Hollywood-based things, but is there any element of it where you're responsible for bringing money, or have you been fortunate enough to walk in where they're offering you money?
I did try to raise money a lot when I was making movies independently, and I even did an Indiegogo campaign for a feature that we sadly never finished. And part of that was because one more piece of advice I wish I had taken, which I heard a lot, was make sure you also raise money for post-production. And I feel like you can actually get through production a lot easier because everyone loves being together and being on set, and you can sort of just give bagels and it's fine. But post is such a lonely, isolating experience, and for an editor and a composer, and typically you do have to pay them something for their time. So I'm not very good at raising money. That's what I'll say. So I have had the experience lately of coming into fully funded projects, which is great. But I'll tell you that on Tagged, one of the ways they raised, they had the money was because we hired a lot of, especially in 2014, they were called influencers. I don't know if they love that term anymore, but these were massive YouTube stars. And the movie that I made called Sick House, which we shot on Snapchat, was on a YouTuber's Snapchat account, and we had 1 million opens per snap while we were posting it live within a minute of posting the snap. So, and also a lot of those vloggers want to transition to other careers. So they're, if you can forge a relationship with someone with a huge audience, I think that Chris is exactly right, is the money will come to you then.
Good point. Good point. All right, we'll do a couple more. So how have you seen the filmmaking process change due to COVID, and do you see it ever going back to how it was? Dino, that's kind of a pessimistic view. It's got to go back, doesn't it, guys? Tell us what you're experiencing.
I will say that I'm not sure that it will ever go back entirely to the way it was, but movies and TV will continue to be made in great, great numbers. We've seen that, partly because and people always love to be entertained, but during COVID, people were just eating up content. And from my, sort of minor perspective here in Hollywood, people were selling left and right. I have friends who are much more experienced than me who were digging up old scripts to sell them because people were buying. And so now there's a little bit of a backlog because now everyone's going back. And so they sort of bought too much. But they're, my boyfriend is actually a COVID safety monitor on the NBC show This Is Us. And, where there's a will, there's a way. We know that. They are making a TV show and they're doing it safely, and it's much more expensive.
Just ask Tom Cruise.
Exactly. Well, yeah. I mean, he was saying all the right things. Like, we've got to be safe. I feel a lot of pressure as a director. I feel this movie I'm about to go to, obviously I want to take care of, especially my actors who have to be unmasked. So there's a lot of responsibility there. And that's why people are dumping a lot of money into testing and safety protocols. But I think the exciting part is films are still being made. So
I was just going to say another 48-hour, a successful 48-hour filmmaker team, Jenna St. John and Kevin Good, filmed 3 half-hour episodes of a series that they're doing called Sexpectations, and they did that under SAG COVID rules. So the SAG actors, and I actually got myself certified as a COVID safety supervisor to help out on the set. And the biggest drawback, I think, was just the overhead associated with it, having to put people in a trailer and keep them isolated, et cetera. And so there was extra cost associated with it.
Sure.
But we were able to make it work. Nobody got sick, and they got some really great footage in the can. So I think it's been possible to make movies if you took the rules seriously. And I, for one, think it will go back to the way it was because there's just too much momentum for it not to.
Yeah. All right, let's go to another question if we have more. Maybe. Okay. Tell us more about the Agile. So I don't know if we're going to have enough time to get too much more into that, Chris. How about you give us the
give us a link.
You give us the link to the podcast. That might be the best.
Yeah. So BK, if you go to ebullient.com/podcast/Christian-Kaniga-Longship, which you'll never be able to figure out, so we'll put it in the chat. Somehow, Christian tells all about that approach. And again, it's a process in discovery. There we go. Thank you. It's a journey of discovery, and so it's trying to find the best of say more the traditional way of not only shooting but also producing, and also finding audience as well. So go check that out, and then if anyone is interested more, you can get us at longshipfilms.com, and happy to share because it's I guess it's an open method, if you will. And so if other people start to dabble with it, we would love to hear back from you on it. Mark, is it okay if I ask a question?
Well, if it's a short one, because we're well over time, and I'm hoping that we haven't abused your time, panelists. But let's go for one more, and then we'll wrap up.
Well, when I was having a conversation with Jonathan on the podcast, so if people can go listen to that as well, that was also really fun. We had we wrestled with this dimension of the creative and creative aspect and the commercial aspect. And Jonathan's feeling was, if I can paraphrase, was go make the movie with yourself as the audience. And for myself, I was like, well, commercially, I'd rather figure out what this persona is for the audience and make something more targeted for sale. And that is a fascinating debate that I have with Christian a lot. And so I'm just curious if we have a minute from people to say, how do you, as directors and creative filmmakers, balance that creative and commercial tension?
Right. Are you making it for you, or are you making it for others?
Well, just to clarify, I think what I was trying to say, Chris, was that you're best off making a movie in a genre of which you're a fan. I think that's what I was really trying to get at. In other words, my first film was a horror movie called Within the Darkness. And it was a horror film, But I'm not a huge horror film fanatic. It's just that everybody's first film is supposed to be a horror film. And I think you'll make a better movie and more commercially viable movie if you're a fan. In other words, if you're a good representative of the audience for whom that film is being made. So it's not about creating a personal film, which is another topic, but more about making sure that you're a fan of the genre of the film you're trying to make.
Hannah, Wayne, what would you want to add?
Well, the biggest thing for me when I realized I want to make these and I want to try to make some money on them, because otherwise it's great to do it, but if I can't pay the bills, I can't pay the bills. So the biggest thing for me was genres, and obviously horror and sci-fi were big ones for me for being marketable, and I didn't have to have huge stars for sales agents to have interest. Mm-hmm. However, what you bring up, Jonathan, is interesting, because one of the things I always notice on the 48-hour film is sometimes people will have preconceived ideas of what they hope their genre is going to be, right? I'm really good at comedy. I hope I get comedy. And then they get spy thriller or something like that. But there's always that crossing. So if you can take horror and your strength is comedy and you can mix those two together, which is quite a successful, blend, then maybe you get the best of both worlds.
Sure. I like it. Hannah?
Well, what I'm hearing, I feel like, is the typical director-producer relationship. And you obviously have that with Christian, and I think you both push each other from what I've heard. But I think it is smart as a director to also be sort of commercially minded. However, I think that if you don't love a project, like truly love the characters and love the story you're telling, especially because we know development can take years and post can take years and setting it up. If you lose your passion. So I think number one, and it doesn't matter if you think anyone else will care. The beauty of this market with all the streaming platforms is it will find a home if you care. Like there's all these niche audiences now. And I think that's so great.
Well, thank you guys. Your passion for your work has really shown through. Certainly just taking a look at the trailers you've created, it's amazing stuff you've managed to make. I really, on behalf of the entire 48-Hour Film Project, wish you much success in the future. And thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for starting it, Mark.
Yeah. Well, I'm inspired by you and by all of the filmmakers. So a message to our Filmapalooza audience. We've got all the films online right now, as well as plenty of workshops that discuss some of these topics that our panelists have already talked about. We've got a distribution workshop with three very knowledgeable people in the business. So lots to learn. And tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern, it's the awards ceremony. Who is going to be the grand champion for 2021? Stay tuned. Thank you all so much.
God needed 6 days to create this world. I'll take a third of that and give it a whirl. Friday night we'll get our genre, person, prop, and line. Then fuss and fight and write all night, concocting our design. 48 hours isn't much time to compose a hit, but life is short and this short film sure to make the most of it. So it really doesn't matter what you look like, say, or do. I know that I had a cooler weekend than you. It's 3 a.m. on Sunday, I feel like crap. I've been working too hard to eat, bathe, or nap. Writing, shooting, editing at such a hurried pace. They won't believe when our film screens this only took 2 days. Work on Monday's going to suck, but here's what gets me through. I know that I had a cooler weekend than you. The 11th hour doesn't mean the last minute. At that point, we're just beginning. At hour 46, we'll burn a DVD. Sit back, relax, the project's rendering. Yeah, it's still rendering. It's rendering. Yeah, it's still rendering. I said, yeah, it's still rendering. Still rendering. It's taking a really long time to render. Still stakes are high, the time is short. It's cinema designed as sport.